Hello and welcome, my Sherba hooligans and mate addicts. Welcome back to another episode of Mateina, powered by Somos Mateina. We have a jam-packed episode today with a rather untraditional topic, and we're also looking at the business side of mate today. The more untraditional one is a Sherba of the Week review. I tried to find a very exotic one and I stumbled upon something where the keyword is tostada. But more in a few minutes. And then we look at the mate business side. We look at market value, how it is distributed throughout the world, and is Argentina or Uruguay the main mate producer or consumer, or maybe another country? That and many more things we're going to look at today. But first, I would like to say thanks to each and all of you for tuning in again. We've reached a milestone. 100 streams is what we've reached this week. And we also added a new country to our list of listeners. Guyana. Yes, shout out to the West Indies. I hope to welcome more people from this region soon. Guyana, if you want to tell me how you found me, how you found us, just drop a comment. And another premiere today. We are on YouTube now. We've started our YouTube channel. Of course, it is called Somos Mateina. So take a look. You can listen to our podcast there. And also let me know, podcasts are just audio recordings, but would you also be interested in seeing videos, in having a live show? Let me know in the comments below or on Instagram at Somos Mateina. So let's start without any further ado, but as always, we have to start the episode with a sip of Sherba. I hope you can hear it. I am drinking La Merced today. This is my Sherba for the day. Alright, my materos and materas. Let's start with the Sherba of the Week. If you say Sherba mate, most people picture the same scene. A hollowed gourd, metal straw, hot water, 70 to 80 degrees hot, and they pour it carefully in that hollowed gourd and drink. That is sort of green and grassy and sometimes unapologetically bitter. It's a ritual. You pass the gourd on, and it has a taste that you have to learn how to love. But today, we're flipping the script a little bit. I'm telling you a different story, a different mate story. One that doesn't begin in the countryside of Argentina or the plains of Uruguay, but in the heat and the bustle of Brazil's coastal cities. A story where Sherba mate leaves the gourd behind, it trades smoke for fire, and becomes something softer, warmer, and unexpectedly familiar. This is the story of Cha Mate Real. To understand it, we have to go back in time a little bit. At the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, Brazil was changing fast. Cities like Rio de Janeiro were growing, modernizing, absorbing influences from Europe while holding on to local traditions. Coffee was still king. Tea was well known. Cafes and street vendors were part of your daily life. And yerba mate, already deeply rooted in the south of the country, was finding new forms. In southern Brazil, people drank what it's called chimarrão, bright green, fresh-tasting mate made from finely ground leaves, sipped hot and shared socially. But as mate moved north and east, it adapted. The climate was different, the culture was different too, and so was the rhythm of life. So, the mate had to change with it. Instead of drying the leaves and keeping them green, producers began to roast them. Fully and intentionally, the leaves darkened, aromas shifted, flavors softened. This wasn't smoking. There was no wood fire infusing the leaves with forest notes. It was roasting, pure heat transforming the plant. And the roasted mate became known simply as chá mate. Chá mate real is part of that tradition now. It doesn't present itself as a rare, artisanal, or exclusive brand or yerba. In fact, it does the exact opposite. Mate real is an everyday brand, the kind you'd find in Brazilian homes, cafes, and markets. It's humble, familiar, it's unpretentious. And that's exactly what makes it interesting. The yerba itself comes from the plant that we know as Ilex paraguariensis, the same plant used across South America. But what happens next is where the path diverges. After harvesting and initial drying, the leaves are roasted until they turn a deep brown, sometimes almost chestnut colored. This process changes everything. Gone is the sharp, vegetal edge of green mate. Gone is the smoke of barbacoa. In its place, something warmer emerges. When you open a bag of chá mate real, the aroma isn't grassy or forest-like. It's roasty. It's toasted bread, nuts, a hint of cocoa. It's almost coffee-like, but a little bit lighter and smoother and softer. Instead of a cloudy green infusion, you get a clear amber to reddish brown cup, closer in appearance to black tea. The first sip surprises people who expect traditional mate. The bitterness is there, but it's softer, it's gentle, it's a polite bitterness. There is a subtle sweetness that feels caramelized rather than sugary. The aftertaste is warm, it lingers, but it's not sharp and not dry. If you've ever had roasted barley tea, or chicha, for example, or a very light black tea, this will feel familiar, comforting, and easy to drink. And that ease is the point. Chá mate isn't about ritual. It's not about technique. It doesn't require special tools or cultural knowledge. You don't need a gourd or a bombilla. You don't need to know when to pour or how to rotate the leaves. You just brew it. You also drink it out of a regular cup, not a gourd. 1 tablespoon per cup. Water just off the boil. 3 to 5 minutes. Strain. And that's it. In Brazil, it's traditionally sweetened, sometimes even generously sweetened. Lemon is common too, especially in warmer regions. The drink adapts to the moment, morning, afternoon, evening, with food, without food, before food, after food, alone, or with others. And then there is the iced version. If hot chá mate is comforting, iced cha mate is iconic. Brewed strong, cooled, poured over ice, finished with lemon and sugar, it becomes one of Brazil's most beloved street drinks. Refreshing, lightly energizing, perfect for heat and humidity. Vendors sell it in tall glasses, condensation running down the sides, the color glowing amber in the sun. This is not necessarily your classic mate, but it's everyday life in Brazil without chimarrão. What's especially interesting is how the caffeine behaves, because cha mate real still contains mate's natural stimulants, but the effects feel different, softer and slower, less aggressive. More like your classic black tea. Many people drink it in the evening without having any issues falling asleep. That's part chemistry, part psychology. Roasting changes the way flavor interacts with the body. The drink feels grounded rather than sharp, energizing without urgency. And culturally, that matters. Because cha mate real reflects a Brazilian relationship with mate that's less about intensity and more about balance. Less about endurance and more about enjoyment. It's mate that fits into urban life, to cafes, into mugs, or into glasses filled with ice. It's also worth noting that cha mate real is not. It's not complex in the way single origin aged mates are. It doesn't speak a terroir of forest, canopy, or harvest seasons. It's not designed for repeated infusion. You brew it once, and it gives you everything that you want. And that simplicity is intentional. Mate real belongs to a tradition that values consistency over complexity, comfort over challenge. It's not asking you to acquire a taste. It's offering you one. In many ways, cha mate real sits at a crossroads between cultures. It's yerba mate, of course, but it behaves more like classic tea. It looks like classic tea. It's brewed like classic tea. And for many people, it becomes a bridge, a way into mate without bitterness, smoke, or ritual barriers. That's why it resonates with your classic tea drinkers, with coffee drinkers looking for something gentler, with people who want the benefit of mate without the intensity. And maybe that's the quiet genius of cha mate real. It doesn't shout, it doesn't perform. It simply exists, steady, warm, and familiar. A drink that's been part of Brazilian life for generations, just like chimarrão. The next time someone tells you there is only one way to drink yerba mate, remember this story. Remember that mate isn't a single tradition. It's many. It's adaptable. It's cultural. It's shaped by place and people. And cha mate real tells us something. When you roast the leaves, soften the edges, and let go of ceremony, mate becomes something else entirely. Yeah, cha mate. It's different. While it is still the Ilex paraguariensis plant that you put in hot water. But you can also look at Amanda, for example. I have tea bags that you put in your tea and drink it. More like your traditional and classic tea. So what I'm trying to say here is you don't have to be the hardcore mate aficionado that I am and some other people are. Gourd collectors, bombisha collectors, testing different mate flavors, mate fusions. All you have to do is enjoy your tea, enjoy your mate. No matter how you drink it, you're part of the community. And that, my friends, brings me to part 2. How a gourd became the global business. We're going commercial today. Yes, because mate, in fact, is a multi-billion-dollar business. But again, before we start, the gourd screams for a nice little pour. Yes, let's move on. And let me start with the question. How many of you listening right now have coffee within arm's reach? A mug, paper cup, glass, a thermos. Maybe something you paid $7 or more for and didn't even blink. Coffee feels universal, right? It feels normal, inevitable. But there's another drink out there that millions, and yes, it is millions of people consume with the same level of devotion. And sometimes even more. And most of the world barely notices it. And since you know that you're listening to a mate podcast, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? Exactly. Yerba mate. Mi pasión. And if you've ever wondered why someone is walking around with what looks like a hollowed out cup, a metal straw, and an expression of deep spiritual focus, congratulations. You've encountered mate culture in the wild. What's fascinating is that yerba mate is simultaneously ancient and very modern. It's deeply traditional with aggressive commercial, communal, and increasingly individual. It's a drink that was never meant to scale. And yet, here we are. With canned mate, you can buy at gas station, and venture capital flowing around the plant that indigenous communities were drinking centuries before anyone invented the word startup. So if you've never seen yerba mate, go to a gas station, go to a store. You'll find it in cans, you'll find it in glass bottles. It's more like a soda. It doesn't really have that traditional flavor, but you've probably seen yerba mate. If you've seen it in a classic way, then you probably saw people walking around with thermoses full of hot water. A mate gourd, a bombicher, looks sort of a straw, metal. Some even very fancy. Look at Bessie's. I think his bombicha is like $200 or something. His gourd way past $300. Has the names of his children engraved in it, and probably his wife's too. Yeah, that's the traditional way of mate. So today, I want to talk about the business side of yerba mate. Not in a stiff MBA way, more like where does the money actually go? Who's winning? Who's struggling? And how did this humble leaf quietly become a multi-billion-dollar global industry? Because yes, multi-billion with a B. Right now, the total global yerba mate market is estimated at somewhere between 6 and 10 billion US dollars per year, depending on how you count it. That includes loose leaf yerba mate, tea bags, extracts, supplements, and especially ready-to-drink beverages. If we split the difference and call it roughly $8 billion, here's where things get interesting. About 65 to 70% of that value is still concentrated in South America. Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, they don't dominate just the production, but also the consumption. Makes sense, right? This is where mate started its journey. Mate over there isn't just a trend, it's an infrastructure, it's daily calories for the brain. However, in the United States, mate accounts for roughly 15 to 20% of the global market value, even though consumption per person is tiny compared to South America. But that tells you something important right away. The US market is small in volume, but big in price. Premium pricing. Canned drinks is very common there. The branding, marketing, and all the expensive stuff. However, because of a lot of immigrants from Argentina, Uruguay, I'm just thinking of Miami, for example. I believe it's the biggest Argentinian community in the US, in Miami. You'll find mate on every corner. So let's take a look at the market share in Europe, which makes up around 10 to 15%, which is a big portion, I would say. It's concentrated mainly in Spain, Portugal a little bit, France, even in the Nordic countries, and a growing market in Germany. However, in Germany, the market contains mostly of tea bags, classic mate tea bags. It's mostly known as a wellness product, and also the typical mate, and I'm air quoting it, energy drinks. So already you can see an imbalance. Most of the mate is grown and drunk in South America, which you probably expected, right? A disproportionate amount of the profit growth is happening elsewhere though. The US mate is not cheap there. To understand why, we have to go back, way back. Yerba mate didn't start as a product or a brand or a lifestyle brand, if you will. It started as a shared ritual among the Guarani people. I know we talked about this before, but it's important to keep that in mind. Because mate wasn't about energy hacks or productivity. It was more about connections, endurance, and the community where you sit, drink, share it. You didn't own mate. You passed it, literally. One gourd, one straw, many people. And try pitching that to a Silicon Valley investor these days. Huh? He will show you the door faster than you can finish the sentence, probably. But things have changed with colonization. The Spanish figured out pretty quickly that mate made people work longer and feel less tired, and that's basically the origin story of half of capitalism, right? So by the 1600s and 1700s, mate was being cultivated, traded, and taxed, and even regulated. It had officially entered the economy. Fast forward to today, and global production, which sits around 1.1 to 1.3 million metric tons a year. I have to repeat this, 1.1 to 1.3 million metric tons per year. Argentina alone produces more than half of that. Brazil follows, Paraguay, and Uruguay, but they barely produce any. However, they consume so much per person that it feels like it should get an honorary farming medal. Yeah, so there you have it. Argentina produces the most yerba in the world, and Uruguay consumes the most yerba in the world. Did you know this? Yeah, no? Just drop a comment below. Let me know. Again, Instagram or on YouTube or here, wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform. Very interesting fact, I would say. So in Uruguay, the average person, and what do you think? What the average person drinks? Is it a kilo of yerba mate? Is it 2 kilos, half a kilo? 10 kilos, 100 kilos? Well, I'm gonna reveal it for you. In Uruguay, the average person drinks over 8 kilograms of yerba mate per year. So depending on how much yerba you put or your gourd can hold, that tells you how many liters or how many ounces or how many gallons you can drink. 8 kilograms. Yes, 8 kilograms. That's about 17.63 pounds of yerba mate that is consumed in Uruguay. So now we need a comparison, right? What does the average American drink of coffee? Because it's a little bit unfair to compare yerba mate consumption in the United States with the yerba mate consumption in Uruguay or Argentina, right? So let's compare it with coffee, because that's the most popular drink still. What do you think? How many kilograms of coffee does the American drink on an average per year? We have 8 kilos of yerba mate in Uruguay. And in America, we have only 4 kilos of coffee annually. So when someone tells you mate is niche, what they really mean is it's niche to you or to me or to someone else. But in terms of numbers, 1.1 to 1.3 million metric tons per year, that's not niche anymore. So now, my friends, let's talk about big business. Let's talk about money, because this is where things get real, right? Yerba mate is a long-term crop. The plant, which is a bush or tree, depending how it grows, you wait for about 3 to 5 years before you can harvest anything. It takes a little bit. Once it's mature, it can produce leaves for 20 to 30 years. That means farmers are locking up land, labor, and capital for years before seeing returns. This is not a quick flip. In Argentina, there are roughly 12 to 15,000 mate producers. And most of them are small farmers. Many work plots under 10 hectares. These farmers sell fresh green leaves to processing facilities. On average, they might earn 20 to 40 cents per kilogram of that beautiful green leaf. After drying, aging, and processing, that turns into roughly 1 kilogram of finished yerba mate for every 3 kilograms harvested. And that same kilogram might sell for, what do you think? $6 to $10 locally, or $20 to $40 internationally. $6 to $10 locally, or $20 to $40 internationally. Yeah, it's true. I've seen mate go for about 20 or even more dollars a kilo. That's big business, right? So the farmer who waited years for that tree or bush to grow dealt with frost, drought, labor shortages, price swings, many more other unforeseeables. That farmer might see less than $1 of value from a product that eventually sells for 40. That isn't unique to mate, but it matters, because here mate marketing leans heavily on ideas like tradition, fairness, and sustainability. Processing adds some value. Yeah, of course. Yerba mate has to be dried quickly, then aged anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Aging requires storage, patience, and that means capital. Larger companies can afford to sit on the inventory. Smaller producers, often they can't. And then comes branding. And branding is where the rocket fuel is. We have to differentiate here a little bit, because once it is packaged, exported, flavored, and canned, influencer approved maybe, and placed in a refrigerated shelf next to energy drinks, the economics completely change, because a $4 can of yerba mate might contain 10 to 15 cents worth of raw leaf. The rest is logistics, aluminum, marketing, and storytelling. It behaves a little bit differently with your classic yerba mate that is not canned and refrigerated. The profits for farmers is a little bit higher. The profit for mate producers is a little bit higher. But in the end, big business in the US anyways, and also in Europe, is still the canned version. This is why ready-to-drink mate has essentially exploded, especially in the US and Europe, because that segment alone is worth $400 to $600 million annually. And it's growing at 10 to 15% a year. That's what investors love because it's scalable. It looks like coffee, it behaves like soda. It fits neatly into existing distribution systems. Whereas loose leaf mate, it grows slowly, but it's more stable. It's more of a loyal drink. But it doesn't promise hockey stick charts. Cans promise either massive success or total failure. And venture capital is weirdly okay with that. Of course, mate has a branding problem that coffee doesn't. Because coffee doesn't need instructions. Mate, it's a little bit more tricky in the beginning, right? The gourd, the bombisha, the bitterness, the sharing, if you will. It's sometimes intimidating. But it's beautiful. So brands simplify it. They put it in tea packs, pots, cans. Convenience wins. Ritual loses. And that creates an identity crisis. Is mate a drink, a ritual, a functional supplement, a cultural artifact? The industry hasn't fully answered that yet, I would say, right? It depends on really what you as a mate drinker see it as. Sustainability adds another layer. Yerba mate can grow in biodiverse, shade-grown systems that protect forests and wildlife. Exports make everything harder. Shipping costs, tariffs. Talking about tariffs. Inspections, labeling rules. These can add 30% or even more to the total cost. Large exporters, they manage, but small ones, well, you guessed it, they might struggle. And looming over all of this is climate change. Yerba mate is very sensitive to frost and drought. Some projections suggest 15 to 30% yield volatility is coming decades. That's not a rounding error, that's existential. So when you zoom out, the business of yerba mate isn't really about caffeine. It's about time. It's about who can afford to wait, who controls the narrative, and who captures the value. But let's end this on a good note, because mate survived colonization, industrialization, and globalization. The open question now is whether it can survive success without losing the people who made it matter in the first place. And whether the next $1 billion in mate will flow back to the roots or just further down the supply chain. Yeah, yerba mate is big business. As we've learned, global production sits around 1.1 to 1.3 million metric tons per year. 8 kilos of yerba mate consumption in Uruguay versus 4 kilograms of coffee. Annually in the United States, big business, right? Because 65 to 70% of the value is still concentrated in South America. However, a good portion of the market share is already divided between Europe and the United States. So let's see how mate develops. And if you want to know how I and we at Somos Martina think it's going to grow, and I am very positive that it will grow, even in its traditional form, with the gourd and the bombisha, and the thermos with water that has about 70 to 80 degrees centigrade. Then tune in next time. Every Wednesday we are in business on your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're going to talk, of course, about the Sherba of the week. Shall we continue with the Brazilians, like Chimarau? Maybe. We will see. We still have a couple of days until then. And we're going to take a look at mate myths and where mate is headed. And as I previously said, we at Somos Mateina, and I personally believe that mate will grow in the next years, and sometimes when things start off as a trend, they become tradition. So, my mate addicts and Sherba hooligans, thanks for tuning in today. Again, a nice and big shout out to my Guyana listeners. Spread the word, drink a mate, sip on some good Sherba, and don't forget to tune in next time, because el café es para mortales, el mate para leyendas. I'm your host, Thomas. And at the end of this episode, I would like to say thank you to someone very special. This episode is also dedicated to him. He was one of the founding fathers and the inspiring part of Somos Mateina. And I'm honored to have been able to call him my best friend, Munch. You will be missed forever.